Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming and tuning in on DMTV. We're excited to have an update on a couple of important agenda items today for the City Council, and we appreciate everybody being here. The first topic for input to the council is Des Moines Age-Friendly City, Great Places for All Ages. It's a status report. Kent Sovereign is going to make the beginning of the presentation and introduce others. Kent's been a friend of mine, but he's also been a friend of the city, going back to when he represented cities at the Iowa State Capitol through your lobbying work. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Coleman, and welcome to a brief update. I'm going to try to be as quick and brief an update on our activities around Great Places for All Ages the last couple of years. You might remember a couple of years ago, Dr. Shaw, Yogi Shaw from Des Moines University, Dr. Joe Ola from Aging Resources of Central Iowa came to you and requested that the city put in an application to the World Health Organization to be one of the aging, Great Places for All Ages, age-friendly cities designation through the World Health Organization template. You all agreed to that, appointed Doug Roeming, your housing coordinator, onto the work group, and we began working at that point, preparing for what is no surprise to anybody who's had their eyes open for the last 3 decades or 4 decades. This is all we've been talking about is the boomers coming in. 10,000 of us reach the age of 65 every day, as I did August 3rd of this year. And and about 2030, we'll have over twice as many people over the age of 65 as we have today. And of course, that's going to affect the physical infrastructure, the social network, and health services and many other aspects of living in Des Moines and in greater Des Moines. If you look at the silver tsunami as it affects Iowa, in 2010, this map shows the blue counties were those greater than 25% population, many higher than that of age 65 or older. By 2030, all but the urban counties there will be surpass that milestone. But even in those yellow counties, such as Polk and Dallas and Story, the actual numbers of folks over the age of 65 will be far outpaced. We'll have more folks over 65 in the city of Des Moines, already do, than many counties have in their entire population. So what does all that mean? Well, it means a terrific opportunity to be responsive to those special needs of folks as we get older. You know, I had the privilege of working with the Greater Des Moines Partnership for a number of years. And some 16, 17, 18 years ago, some of you might remember, we set upon a strategy to make Des Moines a world-class community. And look at the results. Just recently, all these great rankings. So I think that the city, the county, the business community, the Greater Des Moines Partnership, so many great organizations have come together to really elevate the city of Des Moines and Des Moines proper in the world view and in the regional view and in the state view. And as I came on board a couple of years ago as state director of AARP, and Joel and Yogi brought to us this age-friendly template, why not make the city of Des Moines the #1 age-friendly city? Why not? Because we are so good at being working regionally and working together. What is an age-friendly city? It's an inclusive and accessible urban environment that promotes active aging, and active aging is the key word here. Folks are going to age. Those of us who were 40 20 years ago are, knock on wood, going to be 80 20 years from now. So think about this range of what it's going to take to make this community from the point of infrastructure, social capital, and health services, communications, what we need to be. As people's needs change, our community should change too. But remember that the city, the governmental structure, county government, city government, all of those structures is just one piece of a total effort on that. We began the process of collecting information from the 50-plus population with this central theme. What affects your ability to live your best life in your community? And as we went around and did a series of 8 community meetings in the various neighborhoods around the city, we heard lots of things. Time with family, financial security, ability to get around, safety. All kinds of issues came into play, but we can, if you will, distill those into 3. Iowans want independence, choice, and control. The 50-plus population wants independence, choice, and control in all that they do, not just for themselves, but for society as a whole. So with that, we began looking at the template that the World Health Organization has called Age-Friendly Cities, and Des Moines University, Aging Resources, and AARP came together with the city to form work groups and to apply, as I mentioned, for that age-friendly city status. And in October 2011, you received a letter, a communication from a World Health Organization said, guess what, you're in the club. So outside of Portland and New York City, the number 3 city, the 3rd city in the United States to be embraced in this World Health Organization age-friendly network was the city of Des Moines. So we're very proud of that. Did it make us, did we get that stamp? Did we get the good housekeeping seal of approval? Not yet. We committed to a process in years 1 and 2 of planning, involving folks, developing an action plan, identifying indicators of how we're going to progress to be that number 1 age-friendly city. And now we're on the threshold of implementation. And today's presentation is to take you and introduce you to some of those ideas that we're going to bring forward during the implementation stage. Well, the first thing, as is our custom here in Central Iowa, is to bring all of the usual suspects around the table. So we went to the Greater Des Moines Partnership, the Community Foundation, Polk County, and these other organizations that you see logoed up there, and asked them to be part of the advisory commission. Councilman Mahaffey is part of that advisory group, as well as other folks that you would recognize in the community. We also began regular communication with neighborhood leaders and asked them to get involved as much as possible with the visioning and the planning of this. And so each of our focus groups, each of our task forces is co-headed by a member of a leader from the neighborhood association. The age-friendly template has 8 areas of focus, but working with 8 subcommittees would be overwhelming. So what we did was combine housing, transportation, outdoor spaces, and building into one group called infrastructure. So we'll think about that as the built environment. The second area, social participation, respect, social inclusion, civic participation, employment, we call that social capital. And Dr. Ola is the leader of that particular work group. And then community sports and services, communication and information, health services, and Dr. Shaw is the leader of that. So we began, as I mentioned, having these community meetings all around, getting input from folks, and we took them through these criteria, through the template, got their ideas about other criteria that may make Des Moines, Greater Des Moines, more age-friendly in these areas. In social environment and social capital, in healthcare and communications. So we delineated to the folks that were there in these workshops what these meant. We got their opinions, both written on the wall and with audience response systems. So we got a great deal of information. And then we organized into our 3 working groups. As I mentioned, AARP is leading the infrastructure work group, Aging Resources, the social capital work group in Des Moines University, the health services work group. And you can see this is our table of organization for the project. The work groups have been meeting over the last year and a half, year and 2 months anyway, and having in-depth discussion. In addition, we had a statewide meeting in consultation with Governing Magazine a year ago in June, and we brought together thought leaders from business, government, other sectors, and had an in-depth discussion not only about how Des Moines should prepare for this silver tsunami, but how the business community and other organizations ought to do as well. What we have initiated here and in Portland and in New York has grown under the AARP banner in cooperation with the WHO into these great places for all ages, age-friendly communities across the United States. So what people saw the great work that the collaborative work that was being done here in Central Iowa and in Portland, and they said, you know, we really ought to make this available under the AARP banner in other states as well. We partnered with the Milken Institute, and I believe Councilman Moore and I were talking about this just a moment ago. We had the Milken Institute did a study, and Iowa, Des Moines, Iowa, Greater Des Moines came out very, very well. Number 6 out of all of the cities in the United States in the large metro category. It kind of annoys me that Council Bluffs is up there in with Omaha, but we'll you know, over the next couple of months we'll take them down too. We'll be number 1. And then we created a household survey. We've surveyed the residents of Polk County and their measurement. We measured their vision against the template, against the criteria, and we'll have that report for you soon. Right now we're engaged with the City of Des Moines, the Des Moines MPO, in a mapping exercise so that we can physically see, our work groups can physically see where, for example, urgent care centers are located around the city and where that is related to the neighborhoods and where that is, or where those or hospitals or other kinds of public facilities and private facilities are related to DART routes, related to transportation routes and all of that sort of thing. All of that information is going to continue to filter into the work groups. Here are some of the principles that were involved with the work groups. You know, using the expertise of the older residents, and you can read those but one of the most important aspects is we're going to recommend that the city, the county, other organizations, business organizations, adopt an age in everything approach to planning. And what we mean by that is not that necessarily that the first order of business is how does this affect the 50 plus, 60 plus, 70 plus population, but rather to make sure as whether those plans are coming out of the Capital Crossroads Initiative, the Tomorrow Plan, the Planning and Zoning Commission for the City of Des Moines and the other communities, that as you look towards the opportunities for development, you think about how the needs and the desires of the 50 plus population, and then that impacts and affects, if you will, the decisions both of governmental structures and of private business structures. The way commercial businesses are going to relate to customers as an increasing number of customers become 60 plus, 70 plus, 80 plus is going to need to change. And we hope to have new relationships with organizations like Better Business Bureau, Greater Des Moines Partnership, all manner of commercial organizations to bring this age and everything planning principles into effect. We really want to both recognize the impact that older residents have on the economy, as well as being able to respond to them. And of course, the increased focus on improving health and socialization. What are 2 major factors in living well, living active? The first is mobility. Can I get around, both physically and safely? And then is my social network maintained? What happens, for example, we talked about this a little bit. My wife and I are, you know, we're ready to move into a different housing situation. We've raised our kids, got a great house on Germania Drive. It's a lovely neighborhood, but you know, we live on 3 levels.
You're gonna get like 20 calls now.
Yeah, right.
Everybody wants to live.
Yeah. So, but what's our next level of housing has a different need and a different structure. But if you look at where would we find that in the same area where we can maintain our social relationships, our social network? And you think about those housing alternatives are very limited if they exist at all. So what we hope to do is bring to the developing community, the planning community, and the architectural and design community these ideas of what are the needs and how do we infill? What are the opportunities around the city to attract and to create different kinds of housing mechanisms? I'm probably taking a little more time than I should here, but in the age and everything, as I mentioned, here are some of the criteria. Here are some of the recommendations that you'll see in our report come when it's published in November and December. Complete streets, you've already taken action on that. More public seating. We are now doing an assessment with the city of Des Moines around each of these areas so that we'll know how much the city has already put on the table as far as capital investment and that sort of thing. One of the new ideas that came out of the social capital is that we're going to organize a group of volunteers who are going to have an age-friendly business certification program where they'll actually go in, analyze not only the web presence, but actually go in and pretend to be shoppers and that sort of thing and see what kind of an experience through the eyes of the 50 plus, 60 plus, 70 plus shopper there might be. And if you can imagine on the door of whether it's a public facility or private facility, you know, a decal like I'm a member of, you know, the East Side Chamber, or I'm a member of the Greater Des Moines Partnership, or it'll be, I'm a age-friendly, you're entering an age-friendly city business. So we're going to do more to recognize employers that are age-smart, stronger senior alliances. We're going to strengthen senior alliances with college and universities. And we're going to have a speakers bureau that's going to be going out talking more with neighborhood leaders and their association as well. And then in the health services, we're going to take a look at where the biggest opportunity I think we have is coordination of care and greater in-home options here in the city of Des Moines, and as well as more transportation option. But obviously one of the biggest challenges with health is obesity and diabetes, and we're going to see what we can do working with the governor and the Healthiest State Initiative, with Hy-Vee, with Dolls, with the other food providers to see what we can do on health and wellness there in that area. So what's next for us is that we have the survey that we did in Polk County. We've broken it up into 3, and we're going to be pushing that down through the neighborhood leaders so that folks all around the city can take those online. We're working with the city and the county to see what kind of public investments, and with the Greater Des Moines Partnership, what kind of private investments and the not-for-profit investments that are already going in to reach the objectives of the age-friendly community. Do not take this as gospel. This is just a mock-up of something like that decal would look like if you know, I realize that I've ripped off your city logo here, but we'll get the design folks in. But imagine going to that front door and seeing that age-friendly business thing. Engaging the neighborhood leaders. This has been kind of a heavy lift for us, but we're hoping that perhaps a letter from the mayor and the council member that represents particular neighborhoods in combination, highlighting the objectives of the age-friendly Great Places effort will increase participation by the neighborhood leaders. And of course, we want to integrate. We don't want these recommendations, these Great Places recommendations, to sit on the shelf. So we're wanting to integrate those recommendations into the regional plans, the Capitol Crossroads tomorrow, DART, and so forth. And of course, all of these folks are sitting on our advisory council as well. Our continued engagements, check out our Facebook page. It's just getting up and going. We only have 33 likes so far, but we'll be going great. We have interactive website, aarp.org livable, where city leaders or neighborhood leaders, business leaders could go in and actually create their own plan for their neighborhood, for their business, and so forth. We're going to have a regular blog, a lot about walkability, about health and resources on our blog as well. And then, of course, we have these kinds of publications that are going to be available to the neighborhood leaders, to the business leaders, and so forth. And then we're also creating a group of volunteers that are going to do home fit workshops, that actually go in working with the Builders Association and others and do one-on-one consultations with homeowners about making their homes more accessible. Put on your calendar December 10th. We don't know where yet, but we're going to have breakfast, and we're going to invite you all as well as others, and that's when we'll be releasing the report and the recommendation of our first 2 years. Whew. That's it. That's where we're at. That's where we're at. And I want to thank especially the co-chairs, Doug, Yogi, and Joel, for all the great work and support that they've given this effort. We've had more than 60 leading volunteers from the neighborhoods and from our AARP membership and from the collaborating organizations all involved in this over the last couple of years. It's been a lot of fun. And those of you who know me know it's kind of in my sweet spot, and we've just been having a great time with it. I'd be happy to answer any questions, or Joel or Yogi, any questions you might have.
I know we have some comment and question. I just want to thank you for coming. You did a great job with your presentation, and I agree. This is exactly what you should be doing now. I didn't even know you had a big birthday in August.
Yeah. Yeah. To my surprise, I can't get Social Security for another year, but what the heck.
Rick had a comment.
Well, I just to echo those comments, Ken, a great presentation. And I want to highlight a point that you've made that I've talked a little bit about myself, and that's sort of the demographic impact of the aging population, particularly on the shape of the city and the kind of development here. Just one little anecdotal piece. You're all familiar with some of these affordable housing projects we've built around the city, and I'm thinking particularly of John Morrow's project out on 48th and Franklin, I think it is.
Yep.
His project is hardly completed and it's fully occupied. And that trend around the city of these apartment projects that are built and before they're completed, they're completely occupied, and these developers come back and want to build more. And the challenges for a city like Des Moines is how do you fit that kind of development into our city, which is predominantly developed and predominantly zoned, and of course rezoning in existing neighborhoods is always a challenge. But I think that's going to be a really important challenge for the city and for the neighborhood. And I appreciate your emphasis on the neighborhood leaders, because I think a lot of that debate and discussion should occur at that level. But that's going to be a huge opportunity for the city in the next 15 years or so. As that population becomes more and more pronounced and the desire to be in the city in existing neighborhoods is there. So how do you fit that in is going to be an issue. And I think the efforts of groups like yours in the neighborhoods talking to folks and saying this is a need, I think is going to be really important. And it will be a challenge for this council at this table as you entertain different proposals to build housing for seniors, and not just the unit, but the whole neighborhood around it.
That's right. It's so much relies on whether these new developments are built for inclusion or exclusion. And what our members and what the 50-plus population tells us, and I believe Joel will emphasize this in his work group, is that they want to continue that social network. So if you're going to have Luther, for example, Luther Park, you know, one of the things we looked at is how Grandview's expansion is wonderful, but what's the impact on Luther Park's relationship with the neighborhood surrounding it? And can there be a relationship with Grandview that, if you will, enhances and elevates the social capital? Those are the kinds of conversations we're going to have at that level. Because, you know, it's grand to talk about the big picture, but we also have to talk about the nitty-gritty. How do you maintain that? Because that's so important to the quality of life of the population that we're trying to do.
I know you mentioned Grandview, and I know they do have a program for their nurses to go over and work with some of the elderly over there at Luther Park and that. So it's been working good for them.
Yeah.
Skip?
Well, one thing that we hear as we move around different neighborhood meetings is sidewalks. I noticed that you talked about mobility and exercise and stuff for the older generation. I know in my neighborhood, I see a lot of my older neighbors walking every day. Granted, I see a lot of younger people in 30s and 40s, but it seems like the older neighbors really like to walk, and we should be taking a look, since we do have complete streets, we should be taking a look at a sidewalk program around this city to start adding sidewalks to neighborhoods that don't have them.
I really compliment you for everything that you're doing, and I hope you stay real engaged with the city. I'm sure that, you know, that 60 or 70 active leadership volunteer corps that you have has a great role in our boards and commissions and other things that we're doing where the council receives recommendations from. So I'd encourage you to maybe work with our city clerk to make sure that, as you said, continuing to take advantage of the skill set of your volunteers and people over 65. One of the things I think that's changed as a community and probably a society all over is that this is not a discussion about charitable work or how can we do more for the elderly in our community. It is recognizing that they can be a significant part of our community and add a great deal to us. And I think if we aren't smart about the economic opportunities that members of AARP and other senior citizens, senior members of our community have, we're not going to be the community we want to be. And we've had a lot of fights over this politically, and I don't want to get you in the middle of any of them by mentioning any of them in particular. But I hope that the group will take an active role in continuing to advocate at the point where policy is made and projects are determined, because one by one we have to get to this vision, every week, supporting and advocating projects that change our community for the better. So
absolutely. I think the last 2 years we've built the framework, and now we're at the threshold where these kinds of policy discussions will come into play, and there will be balancing. Obviously, there are competing interests in our neighborhood, as we know, over some developable properties. I'm sure that's true. We have a really significant effort going on with the MLK Junior Park neighborhood, Capitol East and Capitol Park neighborhoods, and they're at the cusp of redeveloping or their plans, reinvigorating their plans. And what we're doing with them is saying, hey, let's get these age-friendly template, let's put that into your plan and see how that might affect your plan. So, and it's intergenerational too. I mean, I've talked a lot about the 50-plus population, but one of the most important things for us is that seniors are included in intergenerational activities in the neighborhood. Yeah. So, I don't know if my co-chairs have anything to add or not, but thank you for being here, and what a great team to work with.
Yeah,
really.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate you being here and hope you keep us involved. I'm going to put December 10th on my calendar.
Please do.
And
you'll be getting an invitation shortly as soon as we land on a location.
All right.
Thank you.
We have a second presentation, and I assume it's Doug Romig.
Yep.
Doug also served on the committee with Kent and the AARP. Thanks for being here, Doug.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Coleman, council members, Doug Romig, Housing Services Director. This morning we're just bringing an update regarding what's happening within the Housing Services Department based on some previous actions taken by the Municipal Housing Governing Board and some subcommittees that have been set up. For a quick background, the financial situation that we're facing continues to be what it's been in the past. We're at 69% proration for administrative fees to run our Section 8 program, with a year-end loss of $445,000 for FY13. That loss was covered by reserves that we had in our operating fund. At our public housing operations, we're at an 83% proration. Recent action in the adoption of the FY14 budget with some reduction of staffing has allowed us to balance that budget. And then our housing assistance payments, or the rental subsidy that we provide on behalf of low-income families, was reduced by about $750,000. And again, previous action by the governing board authorized us to use $500,000 in reserves to minimize the impact of those losses due to federal funding cuts to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. One of the initiatives that was set up with the Homeless Coordinating Council was a subcommittee, and we've met with that group a couple times, and we have 5 sort of objectives that we've been asked to research and work on. The first one was to try to obtain approval from HUD to use our disposition funds. Those are the monies that previous was referred to as the endowment fund. When we sold all the public housing units, that was the $13 million fund that helped build the 38 efficiency apartments at Central Iowa Shelter Services. That was our largest capital gift and use of those funds. But we have received a recent notice from HUD that they might allow us to use those funds to help offset our Section 8 admin losses, which would be a great benefit, because if you recall, the Des Moines City Council at last year's budget approved to backstop our anticipated shortfall of about $250,000 for FY14. And if we get this approval, we can take that burden off of the City of Des Moines taxpayers and put it back onto the Housing Department. The other item that has been discussed and presented was looking at a new administrative office for the Housing Department, as we currently lease the lower level of Park Fair Mall. Our previous work, when we looked at the cost benefit, just proved that it wasn't beneficial to move forward with the larger acquisition and consolidation of offices. With the new Municipal Service Center, we have and are looking at the opportunity to move into the Parks and Recreation Admin Office at 3226 University with an anticipated expense of about $1.5 million, and that would be for acquisition, relocation of all of our equipment and supplies, and some minor renovations to make the site work for us. The great thing about that is if we do get HUD approval, the day we walk in the door, we'd save $100,000 a year because we would have no debt service and we would eliminate our annual rent payments. Other actions for us to consider was evaluating partnership opportunities to compete for low-income housing tax credits. We've been in discussions with Anawim Housing. Under this type of operation, Anawim Housing would be the developer. They have the background and the expertise in applying and managing low-income housing tax credit projects. Our expertise is in property management. Evaluate governance options. There's been some initial contact with Polk County. They've expressed some interest in studying our Section 8 program. There is no timeline or scheduled end date for that, but there is some interest in the county in evaluating and looking at how our Section 8 program is run, since our jurisdiction does serve the entire county within Section 8. And then on the municipal governing board meeting this evening, we have a request to approve a proposal award to Nan McCain Associates to look at our organizational review and efficiency study. Again, that particular study is to analyze our operations, to identify a more effective organizational structure, optimize staffing requirements to accomplish our goals and all the requirements under HUD regulations, recommend opportunities and to streamline procedures and processes that are currently required to meet our daily functions, and then identify best practices and performance measures. That includes revenue diversification opportunities as well. Nan McCain is one of the leading agencies in public housing. We actually subscribe to their organization. They provide our templates for our agency plans for both public housing and Section 8. They provide some great training opportunities that we utilize for our staff, and they're a great resource. So we're excited to bring that forward as we look at the future of how to be more sustainable and more self-reliant for an agency. Switching gears here.
Before you leave that topic, can you just give us a quick budget for or cost for the study, if you said that?
It came in at $38,750. We sent out 17 bids, had 2 responses. We had approval from HUD to use our disposition funds not to exceed $40,000, and we had estimated would come in somewhere between 30 and 50, depending on the volume of the study, because they'll be going through our entire agency plan and admin plan, so that's public housing, Section 8, our entire organizational structure, basically coming in and saying if you were creating a public housing agency that had 447 public housing units, 3,400 Section 8 vouchers, and over 200 families in a family self-sufficiency program, how would you organize that structure? At this time, we actually have 3 vacancies within our organization within Section 8, a division manager, senior case manager, and case manager position. We've been struggling since July to sustain operations, but we felt it was important not to fill those vacancies until we get through this study to figure out what our organizational structure would look like and which job descriptions we would use to fill those vacancies to be as effective as we could moving forward.
Earlier in your presentation, you mentioned the question about potential synergy with Polk County, or their client relationships might being a option for the management of Section 8. Will that be evaluated under this contract?
I'll just make a quick comment, then I'll defer to Rick. When we looked at bringing this consultant in, we did reach out to the county to indicate that we were sending out this RFP, asked them if they had any interest in working with the consultant at this time. At that time, with the loss of the county administrator, they have opted not to participate in this particular study, but this will really focus on the housing agency independent of its governance. And then I'll let
Mr. Coleman, I want to expand that a little bit. We're actually going to pursue two parallel courses of action here. Just a little bit of history, and Doug said it really well. The idea of having Polk County actually operate the Section 8 program came up at one of the committee meetings, I think, that you were at, Chris. And so we've had some dialogue with the county. David Jones, who I guess still is, but is leaving as their administrator, had some experience with Section 8 programming in a prior career, and so they looked at it preliminarily. He's leaving now, but I understand, based on conversation just last week, that they are still, sort of interested in looking at that, but they haven't really done a lot with it so far. And I think with their transition going on, they just haven't resolved anything. But it seems to me it still represents a possibility that we ought to try to pursue. But we're confronted with these immediate issues with our operation here, as you all know. And so I think this step that Doug Romig is recommending with the study makes a lot of sense for us to do. Regardless of who's going to operate it, I think these efficiencies would follow through. So I do think it makes sense to pursue both of these, but the county option is on the table, but it may not be necessarily on the front burner right now. It may be more in the back burner as they sort of get their new administrative functions in order, and then turn back and look at it again. I understand that they intend to still look at it, so we'll see where that leads. It's not going to happen in the near future, though.
Okay.
Are there any other questions on the RFP and the award of that? Again, the next piece I wanted to bring forward is the modernization of Royal View Manor. Royal View Manor at 1101 Crocker was constructed in 1973. Along with our other larger public housing multifamily units, we have 4 elderly designated manors scattered throughout the city. We've done a great job of maintaining our infrastructure and replacing items when needed, as you can see on the list there. If you recall, over Christmas last winter, we lost both elevators due to an electrical strike. The first elevator should be renovated and up and running within the next 2 weeks, and then they will start doing the replacement of the second elevator, which will take about a month, 4 to 6 weeks to complete. The areas where we need to do some work is really on the modernization of being an attractive location for families that need affordable housing. We're looking at about a $2.5 million renovation estimate. This would be using our disposition funds, which is an approved use of those funds. And it would include redesigning the first floor offices for better sight lines. Right now our staff is in the back of the building, so we have a difficult time, with the exception of just security camera monitors, of viewing who's entering and leaving the building. We'd have a guest and staff parking lot off 12th Street. With the major renovations and the plans with Principal and the improvements along Keogh, that entrance would become our front door, and I do have some graphics coming up. We'd move laundry services back to our floors 3, 5, and 7. Right now we've got a single laundry facility on the first floor, which is challenging for some of our disabled clients and elderly clients. Especially right now when we have one elevator operating. So that would make it more convenient for them, and that room would be converted into a community room for the tenants of the building. And then remodeling our back entrance and floors 2 through 8. We did do a renovation in 2010 on floor number 9, so we really want to upgrade the look and feel of our apartment complex. And then another key piece is updating our security and key entry systems and providing a space for our housing vehicles. If we relocate out of the Park Fair Mall office site, we don't have any cover storage as it is, but there is not enough space for parking city vehicles for our maintenance staff that have to travel around the community to address needs. So,
What's the estimate on the cost for that garage?
depending on the design, about $470,000. It'd be a 5-bay garage overhead doors,
Heated or non-heated?
non-heated at this point. But they do have some ventilation in there and sprinkler systems as part of the design. Where it says site plan review, that is Crocker Avenue. So on the left side of the screen is 12th Street. That's an incline hill. So for ADA accessibility, it'd be a circle drive with some parking. Again, this would be utilized by our staff and by service providers that are coming in to provide programs and services to the residents of Royal View. That way the existing parking lot in the back would be maintained for tenant parking only. Sort of an overview of the canopy where that drive would come in, again creating sort of a nicer front door look to coincide with the planned improvements along Keel. A different design of that as well. Here's the office configuration that we talked about. In the front left, you can see the parking lot and then the office lobby offices. We have a property manager that's on site, does of our leasing. We have several resident service coordinators. Again, tonight we have grant awards for our family self-sufficiency staff. Those are grant-funded positions. We have one full-time and one part-time dedicated to Royal View. So again, it would open up some sight lines for us, create some security to have our staff co-located in one area to cover each other in absences and address client needs. And then where it says community room in the bottom middle, that is the current laundry facility. Floor modernization, updating the carpet tiles, the painting, the lighting, and the doors with one of the security systems we're looking at is a key fob system where tenants entering the building would use that key fob to enter the building, access and utilize the elevator, plus access their unit. This allows us better ability to track clients' movement throughout the property, but it also then restricts non-tenants from coming in and just wandering the halls and checking for unlocked doors. So the next steps, again this evening on the Municipal Housing Governing Board agenda, we'll be recommending approval to approve the agreement with Nan McCain Associates. But I'd also like to get some consensus from the members that are here about moving forward with the construction documents for Royal View Manor as we can proceed with the hope to try to get those construction documents completed by the end of the year during the good bidding climate, end of December, beginning of January, to move that work forward. And then we'll be back sometime in December at a workshop with the results of the consultant study. We should have information back from HUD on if they've approved us to use the $1.5 million for the Parks Office, so the governing board can make a policy decision if they want us to move forward with that. And hopefully we'll know at that point in time, and we'll have a better feel of what our financial outlook will be based on the work that will be conducted between now and then. I can answer any questions you may have.
Doug, early on in your conversation, you said you had to use reserves to supplement some, evidently some losses or something.
Correct.
How long can you use reserves to do that? Or you have a budget now that you the revenue and expenses will match?
Now, right now, for the FY14 budget, with the action that has been taken, again, our funding is siloed. So we have public housing, Section 8, family self-sufficiency. Our public housing operating budget is balanced with the changes that were made. Where we're struggling is in our Section 8 administrative side, and that's where in the FY14 budget, the Des Moines City Council agreed to backstop us $250,000. We are projected about $450,000 to $500,000 losses annually based on our current organizational structure within Section 8. We were utilizing our remaining reserves, and that shortfall was $250,000. So we will run out of reserves within our Section 8 administrative side in FY14.
So you're hoping that these consultants coming in will design a plan whereby you won't be operating in a deficit then?
Correct, or we'll buy us time. That would be ideal. I'm not sure if we can bridge a $500,000 gap, but I think we can make a large dent in it with some of these initiatives.
Bob, council members, Doug said it really well. Everything he said was accurate, but just to highlight this point, and I want people to understand this, the reason we're struggling with these issues on the Section 8 administrative cost is because the federal government, HUD, has continually reduced the amount of funds available to us. And so at the current rate of expenses relative to revenues, we don't see light at the end of the tunnel right now. So Doug has initiated all these different things that you see on this presentation today in terms of the efficiency study, possible moves to a new place, the old Parks building, that would save money on an ongoing basis. These actions are all intended to see if we can figure out a way to make the whole operation work within the funds that we do have, which continue to decline over time. Our hope is that the HUD reductions will stabilize, but that frankly hasn't been the case. They've been cut, I think, just about every year for the last several years. And so I can't say it's a crisis situation, but we're trying to get ahead of it so it doesn't become a crisis. It is very serious, though, and these actions are, I think, all proper steps in the right direction to hopefully correct the situation a little bit. And that point I made a moment ago about looking at Polk County as part of that same discussion, if Polk County wants to take a look at Section 8 management, why that may be a long-term solution as well, we're going to keep that on the table.
But you're probably, what, 2 years out before you could move to the old Parks and Rec building, before they will be able to relocate down in the new
It might not be
facilities.
that. It might not be that long, depending on decisions, but there's sort of a sequencing here, depending on what the county wants to do and where we ultimately want to go. It could be 2 years out before you're doing that, but I think it also may happen sooner. We're just going to have to see.
When's the proposed move for Parks and Rec to the new municipal facility? I noticed this weekend they've got the walls up.
Yeah. Mr. Moore, I'm not sure if there's
I've
somebody
been
in the...
October of next year
There you go.
at the latest, so
October of 14.
October of 14.
So it would be at least that long before you'd have an option at it.
Yes.
I had a couple of questions, Doug. First, on the new entrance, that building is kind of a tripod. I'd call the current entrance going southeast. Is this the one kind of going southwest or west? Is that?
Yeah, where the front entrance sign is, right on the corner of 12th and Keogh, that would face the bus station that was just sold, the old Greyhound bus station.
All right. And the whole idea of spending that much money at this facility, is it simply that it's a tired building that we need to keep active, or is there an economic aspect of this where it's harder to fill, or we can generate more revenue?
It's both. It's a tired building. There hasn't really been modernization to the interior aesthetics of the building. With the Silver Oaks development right across the way, we will have competition to provide affordable housing for families in that area, because the Silver Oaks development with Homes of Oak Ridge is for 55 and older or individuals with disabilities, which is the majority of our population at Royal View. So we have to stay competitive in the market to maintain our operations, and our revenue is derived based on the number of unit months leased. So if we have a vacant apartment, we don't collect any admin revenues from HUD. So it's to, again, modernize it, to make it more attractive, more appealing, to maintain our occupancy and maintain a full occupant load to maximize revenues within that building.
How many people will live at Silver Oaks across the street?
I'm not sure the size of that development.
Silver Oaks, that's one right on Keel there?
Correct.
It's just being constructed?
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on this? So you were looking for some direction on proceeding to construction drawings?
Correct, just, yes, because that work can happen between now and the end of the year, and then we'd go out to bid, hopefully the first of the year.
Rick, you got a recommendation on that?
Well,
Or
Mr. Coleman, council members, first of all, we don't have a majority of the council here, so we may have to seek additional input on the issue. But from my own perspective, Doug has said it exactly right. Royal View Manor is a tired building, and I think your choice is either do these kinds of, frankly, sort of minimal improvements to make the building a decent place for people to live, or do something completely different with it. There was a period of time where we thought maybe we could sell it. That proved not to be possible given head regulations, so we have to keep it. And I really think these are really the bare minimal improvements that you should do if you want to keep the building in your inventory as a place for people to live. I think not to do it would be really inappropriate given the needs that are with the building.
Doug, give me a review of this. Is this for senior housing, or is this for assisted living for various ages, or Royal View?
Royal View is a mixed age population. We do have quite a few seniors and quite a few tenants that have disabilities within the building, but it's all ages, so 18 to 80.
But they have to meet a earnings requirement?
Yes, they're all low-income qualified families.
I agree with Doug's assessment that if we're going to do something, we ought to expedite it as quickly as possible to take advantage of lower costs. We all know that costs are starting to rise. Is there any way we could have this as an extra item on the agenda for the full council tonight?
Well, is there something to vote on right now?
Not at this point. I just wanted to get a feel if the governing board was willing to invest $2.5 million in this facility.
Let's be clear.
well, what's the next step? Hiring an architect to do construction drawings, or so we
Correct.
know what to bid?
That's what I'm referring to.
I think we can probably, through just talking to the council members, find out if there's an interest in the project. But at some point, you will have to vote on contracts and going forward with officially. I think we're just Doug's trying to get a sense of whether or not this is something you're willing to consider. And I gather from this conversation that there's a positive inclination from the three of you. And if your colleagues would agree, then I think we feel good about going forward with the next step.
I think the point Skip might be making is that if there is consensus to move forward, even a soft, asking the city staff to proceed to, issue an RFP for an architect or something will start this ball rolling. Rick and I were just mentioning to each other, it's a building we need to do something with. And if the plan is that we're going to own it, which I don't know why we wouldn't when we can provide a valuable service to some of our neighbors, it needs to be cleaned up. So, maybe Skip's idea has some merit of just a soft thing, and you can talk to him later in the day to make sure that we do whatever's necessary to kind of give you guys the green light at each stage.
Actually, I agree, and I think maybe we can put together sort of a sense of the council kind of roll call. It won't be too definitive, but just an authorization for us to go forward would be fine, and we could probably add that if you like.
I agree.
I think that's a good idea. If you're done, Doug, can I just mention one thing? Early one morning, not even a month ago, we got a note from Rick Clark, and there had been a fire at Royal View, ironically, that nothing to do with the tenants there. A couple of people were hurt, and I know there was a lot of activity. What impressed me about the note that Rick sent us is that one family who lost their housing for the night, had no other options. Doug actually took him to the downtown Holiday Inn, put him in a hotel on his own personal credit card. And at a time where all of us, I know Skip and Bob hear this too much, you know, you get people giving us a little razzing about the bureaucrats at City Hall and nobody works hard. I know Doug is one of, you know, a couple thousand people that are very committed to the people of our community, and I think this is the first time you've been up in front of us since then, and I just wanted to recognize you going above and beyond for somebody that needed help that night, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything else from you guys? We'll open it up to the public. Thanks, Doug. Any members of the public?
Gavin, it's all staff.
Yep. All right, well, let's adjourn. You guys have a good day. Go do good things.
See you tonight.